The Trojan War was one of the most devastating wars in Greek history. More than 1,000 years before Christ, near the eastern end of the Mediterranean, was a great city, very rich and powerful, second to none on earth. The name was Troy, and even today, no city is more famous. The cause of this long-lasting fame was a war told of in one of the world's greatest poems, the Iliad. And the cause of the war went back to a dispute between three jealous goddesses, which is the prologue and part 1 of our Trojan War arc, the Judgement of Paris. The evil goddess of discord, Eris, was naturally not popular in Olympus, and when the gods gave a banquet, they were apt to leave her out. Resenting this deeply, she determined to make trouble, and she succeeded very well indeed. At an important marriage, that of King Pelus and the sea nymph Thetis, to which she alone of all the divinities were not invited, she threw into the banqueting hall a golden apple marked for the fairest. Of course, to 3. Of course, all the goddess wanted it, but in the end, the choice was narrowed down to 3. Aphrodite, Hera, and Pallas Athena. They asked Zeus to judge between them, but very wisely he refused to have anything to do with the matter. He told them to go to Mount Ida near Troy, where the young prince Paris, also called Alexander, was keeping his father's sheep. He was an excellent judge of beauty, Zeus told them. Paris, the royal king, was doing shepherd's work because his father, Priam, the king of Troy, had been warned that this prince would someday be the ruin of his country. And so he sent him away. At the moment, Paris was living with a lovely nymph named Onoe. We're just going to call her Onoe, because I don't know how to say that. His amazement can be imagined when 3 appeared before him, the wondrous forms of 3 great goddesses. He was not asked, however, to gaze at the radiant divinities and choose which of them seemed the fairest to him, but only to consider the bribes each offered and chose wisely seemed to him best worth taking. Nevertheless, the choice was not easy. What men care for most was set before him. Hera promised to make him lord of Europe and Asia. Athena, that he would lead the Trojans to victory against the Greeks and lay Greece in ruins. Aphrodite, that the first woman in all the world should be his. Paris, a weakling and something of a coward too, as later events showed, chose the last. He gave Aphrodite the golden apple. That was the Judgement of Paris, famed everywhere as the real reason why the Trojan War was fought, which is because Helen was kidnapped. The fairest woman in the world was Helen, the daughter of Zeus and Leda, and the sister of Castor and Pollux. Such was the report of her beauty that not a young prince in Greece but wanted to marry her. When her suitors assembled in her home to make a formal proposal for her hand, they were so many and from such powerful families that her reputed father, King Tyndareus, her mother's husband, was afraid to select one among them, fearing that the others would unite against him. He therefore expected first a solemn oath that they would all champion the cause of Helen's husband, whoever he might be. If any wrong was done to him through his marriage, it was, after all, to each man's advantage to take the oath, since each was hoping he would be the person chosen. So they all bound themselves to punish to the utmost anyone who carried or tried to carry Helen away. And then the king chose Menelaus, the brother of Agamemnon, and made him the king of Sparta as well. So matters stood when Paris gave the golden apple to Aphrodite. The goddess of love and beauty knew very well where the most beautiful woman on earth was to be found. She led the young shepherd, with never a thought of the nymph that he was with, left forlorn, straight to Sparta, where Menelaus and Helen received him graciously as their guest. Ties between guest and host were strong. Each was bound to help and never harm the other. But Paris broke that sacred bond. Menelaus trusting completely to it, left Paris in his home, and he went off to Crete. Then Paris, who coming entered a friend's kind dwelling, shamed the hand that gave him food, stealing away a woman. Menelaus got back to find Helen gone, and he called upon all of Greece to help him. The chieftains responded, as they were bound to. They came eager for the great enterprise. Across the scene lay mighty Troy in ashes. Two, however, of the first rank were missing: Odysseus, king of the island of Ithaca, and Achilles, the son of Peleus and the sea nymph Thetis. Odysseus, who was one of the shrewdest and most sensible men in Greece, did not want to leave his house and family to embark on a romantic adventure overseas for the sake of a faithless woman. He pretended, therefore, that he had gone mad. And when a messenger from the Greek army arrived, the king was plowing a field and sowing it with salt instead of seed. But the messenger was shrewd, too. He seized Odysseus' little son and put him directly in the way of the plow. Instantly, the father turned the plow aside, thus proving that he had all his wits about him. However reluctant, he had to join the army. Achilles was kept back by his mother. The sea nymph knew that if he went to Troy, he was fated to die there. She sent him to the court of Lycomedes, the king who had treacherously killed Theseus and made him wear women's clothes and hide among the maidens. Odysseus was dispatched by the chieftains to find him out. Disguised as a peddler, he went to the court where the lad was said to be, with gay ornaments in his pack, such as women love, and also some fine weapons. While the girls flocked around the trinkets, Achilles fingered the swords and daggers. Odysseus knew him then, and he had no trouble at all in making him disregard what his mother had said and go to the Greek camp with him. So the great fleet made ready. 1,000 ships carried the Greek host. They met at Elis, a place of strong winds and dangerous tides, impossible to sail from, as long as the north wind blew. And it kept on blowing day after day. It broke men's heart, spared not ship nor cable. The time dragged, doubling itself in passing. The army was desperate. At last the soothsayer, Calchas, declared that the god had spoken to him. Artemis was angry. One of her beloved wild creatures, a hare, had been slain by the Greeks, together with her young, and the only way to claim the wind and ensnare a safe voyage to Troy was to appease her by sacrificing to her a royal maiden. Iphigenia, the eldest daughter of the commander-in-chief Agamemnon. This was terrible to all, but to her father, hardly bearable. If I must slay the joy of my house, my daughter, a father's hands, stained with dark streams flowing from blood of a girl slaughtered before the altar. Nevertheless, he yielded. His reputation with the army was at stake, and his ambition to conquer Troy and exalt Greece. He dared the deed, slaying his child to help a war. He sent home for her, writing his wife that he had arranged a great marriage for her. To Achilles, who had already shown himself the best and greatest of all chieftains, but when she came to her wedding, she was carried to the altar to be killed. And all her prayers, cries of Father, Father, her maiden life, these they held as nothing. The savage warriors, battle mad. She died, and the north wind ceased to blow, and the Greek ships sailed out over a quiet sea, but the evil price they had paid was bound some day to bring evil down upon them. When they reached the mouth of Samos, one of the rivers of Troy, the first man to leap ashore was Protesilaus. It was a brave deed, for the oracle had said that he who had landed first would be the first to die. Therefore, when he had fallen by a Trojan spear, the Greeks paid him honors as though he were divine, and the gods, too, greatly distinguished him. They had Hermes bring him up from the dead to see once again his deeply mourning wife. She would not give him up a second time, however. When he went back to the underworld, she went with him. She killed herself. And that is the end of our first part of the Trojan War. Stay tuned for more.